we look at the resources that we have now, or they're being appropriated in a way that will provide the greatest positive impact for the families and the children we're attempting to serve. I've been working with Dr. Maurice Beasley and Ms. Stacey, Stacey Stepney, and is this on this, we're going to do a slide for anything? Okay, good. So what we've been working on really over the last 6 months, since I've had the wonderful opportunity to come and to serve in this position, is what can we do? We hear a lot about achievement gaps and performance gaps, and one of the first things I began to understand is that we need to refocus from the gaps that exist and then begin to start thinking about how do we build bridges for children and their families to move from underperformance to higher achievement. And Dr. Irvin, that's why I asked you to kind of give me a moment to come, and I know you're interested in this. When I was a middle school student, and that's the Bridge Initiative, and it speaks for what we're talking about. And by the way, some of the gaps aren't just academic. And just from some of the conversation we had today, some are cultural, some are racial, some are economic. There are all types of gaps that I think negatively impact outcomes for children, not just in DeKalb County, but in Georgia and all across America. And what we are proposing is not to really build any more walls or focus on the gaps, but how do we build the bridges that young people can cross? We'll go to the next. And one of my favorite poems, The Bridge Building. Some of you all may have been asked or required to memorize this poem. I did when I was an 8th grader in Athens, Georgia. And the poem is about an old man going a lone highway who came in evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide through which was flowing a sullen tide. I made an A on that, by the way, because I still remember it. And it's about, and he crossed. And the interesting thing, Dr. Johnson, is he crossed in the twilight dim because the stream held no fears for him. But what was unique about this man, and we talked about it in senior staff, it wasn't just about an old man, it's about every one of us. The members of this board, the people in this audience. All of us completed our educational journeys. So we have literally crossed the chasm vast and deep and wide. And so now we're at the other side. And people like Dr. Bell and some others, we're all at evening time. And we're looking at how many more years do I have before I can retire. But when he got to the other side, he stopped to build a bridge that he would never cross again. Not many of us really thinking that type of perspective. And someone, a witness, a fellow traveler, told old man, "You wasting your time with building here. So your journey will end with the closing day. You never again will pass this way." And he asked him, "Why are you building a bridge that you will never use again?" And the builder said that in the path I have come, and this is what I said, in the path I came literally out of cotton fields of Clark County, out of poverty, 3 straight generations of it, there are other youth following in that same path that I came. A youth who must also pass this way. He said, a stream that was not a big deal to me, to the youth may a pitfall be. And he said, he too must cross in the twilight dim. He said, I'm building the bridge for him. See, DeKalb County has to be about the business of building bridges. We spent decades trying to separate and delineate and build walls. What this strategy proposes to do is to take those same boulders and bricks and mortar that we built walls with and build a bridge. Next slide. The strategic problem, and I know Vice Chair Jimmy Mack, he's familiar with this. And what Dr. Irwin was saying, what is the problem? Some have suggested that some students do not achieve for various reasons. Parents, community, media, some even suggest it's genetics. But we looked at it, and we come to a conclusion that might strike some as interesting. And this is it. DeKalb county school district's failure, and that's interesting, not the child's failure, not the parent's failure, but this school district's failure to implement a comprehensive strategy designed to bridge growth and achievement gaps has negatively impacted college and career readiness of students from low-income families. Not them, it's us. And one of the key things in talking with Stacy and Doctor is that we didn't call them low-income students. They're students from low-income families. I don't know many students who are high-income. Am I right, Dr. Beasley? All students are what? Low income. Because they are supported by whom? Their parents. And if they have jobs, they're minimum wage jobs, a part-time job. So students are not low-income students. And believe it or not, that's important. Next slide. And I'm going to ask Dr. Beasley and Ms. Stacy to help me when I get to the more difficult part, but keep going. Dr. Beasley, and y'all want to help me with this particular slide. This is the performance flags, the CCRPI data, and it's very important. It looks at, what, all of our elementary schools. So Dr. Beasley, you and Ms. Stacy, y'all help me out. Explain this.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman, Dr. Johnson, and members of the board. The exciting part about defining our problem was looking at the data. And the Harvard team had the opportunity to study what we call the coherence model. So some of our colleagues here are smiling because they recognize the hard work. When we looked at the flags, and I'm going to challenge all of you just to take a brief look at the screen. When you go out into the public domain, the Georgia DOE website, you will see data. And this data looks like this pictorial display here. What the public sees are red flags, green flags, and yellow flags. And they are further described at the top. And for the audience who can't possibly see the small writing, I'll tell you what it says. If you notice the economically disadvantaged group, they have red flags horizontally in each category. Each category would be the English language arts, reading, mathematics, science, and social studies. That red flag indicates that the students met the participation rate. That simply means they came and took the test. The next part of that indicator states, but they did not meet either the state or the subgroup performance target. That's our elementary snapshot. Let's look at our middle school snapshot. We began to see a common thread. The same thing exists on the CRCT for our middle school students. Let's take a journey to the high school. When you look at the high school data, it looks a little different. There's so many EOCT tests that students have to take. And when you look at the data, you will see that our economically disadvantaged students are still performing below the state or their subgroup targets. So I asked the question, what does the data really reveal? When we looked at the common threads for all three, when we talk about K-12, because pre-K's data is not reflected here, but when we talk about K-12, what's the common thread? A common thread is that there is a disproportionate number of economically disadvantaged students who are not performing. They're not meeting the state or the subgroup minimum targets. So these students are not meeting or exceeding the standards defined by the College and Career Readiness Performance Index.
And Ms. Stacy, one thing I want, and you all may have missed it, she said economically disadvantaged, not black, white, Hispanic. Upper income African American students do extremely well, as does white, Hispanic, Asian. The dividing line is the economically disadvantaged. We couch basically all of our thinking and our talk and our narrative, because we are in America in a racial context. But that's very misleading as it relates to student performance data. white economically disadvantaged students struggle in relation to non-economically disadvantaged white students. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So after looking at the data, we had to decide, what is the vision? What do we hope to accomplish? Where do we want to be with this Bridge initiative? We want to help students, parents, families, and educators bridge the gap between the underperformance in academic and career success. And Mr. Thurman has already highlighted that the Bridge initiative is aligned to the 90-day plan, but I would like to draw your attention to 3 actions in particular. The first action is Goal 3, Action Number 7. We will evaluate the academic achievement and career readiness data. We will do a root cause analysis and develop a corrective action plan. Goal 2, Action 4, realign resources. Goal 2, Action 7, and this is powerful. Revise and redeploy Title I, Title II, Race to the Top, and other state and federal grant programs to improve academic and career readiness. These are existing funds that we're going to revise and redeploy. And also invest in parent, adult guardian, and mentor involvement. So as the Bridge initiative continued to expand, we wanted to share the initiative's strategy. The strategy, notice it is a highly integrated, cross-functional, cross-divisional strategy. It's designed to bridge the cultural, socioeconomic, and historical divides that have undermined student performance and achievement. We will develop a holistic understanding of the root causes, analyze student and school achievement data, realign the existing federal funds, and evaluate the pre-K through 12 curriculum program offerings, and also the alignment to the Common Core standards.
And this is important because it goes back to the organization. And when you talk about highly integrated, bureaucracies in general, not just DeKalb, are basically defined by bureaucratic silos that rarely communicate or cooperate within each other inside the bureaucracy. This has a very negative impact on efficiency and outcome, where you have various title and grant streams, number one, not having a holistic strategy, very little communication, and little or no evaluation of the impact of the investment. Go ahead.
And Mr. Thurman, to that end, 3 goals have been identified. The first goal is we would identify, support, and recognize, of course, our high-achieving students, those who are marginal, and, of course, our underperforming students.
Emphasize that because it came up earlier about our gifted students. I think Mr. Coleman asked the question. And could you elaborate a little bit on number 1? Because typically when you think of underperforming students, or at least economically disadvantaged students, what we found is that many of the gifted, high-achieving, or potentially high-achieving economically disadvantaged students have not been properly identified, and consequently, they don't receive the support. And even when they achieve at a high level, they are not properly recognized.
That is correct, Mr. Thurman. As a matter of fact, not only are they under-recognized or served, oftentimes we find, especially in our new growth model, that they're not experiencing the level of growth potentially that their abilities say that they should experience. So they may be high performing, but designated or identified as low growth. Therefore, there are opportunities there to help even those students maximize their potential. So we've got under-identification, underserving, and low growth for kids whose data says that they really should be high performing and high and growing very high. Directly related to that, of course, would be some sub-actions for that goal that we believe directly impact the work that needs to occur with Goal 1. Stacy already mentioned pre-K. We've got to continue to address pre-K, ensure that what students are learning in pre-K is really preparing them for kindergarten and beyond. So we're looking at the alignment there.
Just share what we did this year with pre-K, because just in some conversations, it's news that pre-K is a part of our district in terms of service population. But tell them what we did this year with pre-K.
Well, one thing we've done is Mr. Thurman has several large posters on his walls identifying all the various schools and services that we provide, and we noticed that we didn't have a poster, if you will, with pre-K identified. So we've identified, of course, all the pre-K locations, facilities. Some of them have more than one class. Beyond that, we've looked at standards at the pre-K level. As a matter of fact, this year in the state of Georgia, we rolled out new pre-K standards. So all of our pre-K teachers were trained on those standards. We also purchased iPads for all of the pre-K teachers, so they are assessing students and they are teaching those standards.
And we aligned our pre-K curriculum with Common Core.
That is correct.
And Stacy, because I had a chance to talk, she was kind enough to invite me to talk to the pre-K teachers, and you may want to elaborate, because that's extremely important going forward, because you know all the studies the president and others said, it's by age 4.
Okay. Our pre-K teachers had the option per the state to implement the new curriculum. And when we began to explore the curriculum, we stated, no, you don't have the option. We're moving forward. We're going to implement the curriculum that is aligned to the Common Core standards, because these standards define what the students have to know and be able to do. And the old curriculum focuses on skills, not necessarily what they have to know and be able to do. So uniquely different. And our teachers are having a very steep learning curve, because you're moving away from skills to basically high-level classrooms. They're not focusing on the little social skill type tasks that they had to in the past. Our students are taking advantage of technology, which is very exciting. The teachers have to capture their work samples. When they capture the work samples, that's how we're recording their growth. They are also networking. And in the past, we've had limited professional development for our pre-K teachers. And Mr. Thurman visited the teachers on the 6th and committed to them that he asked the thought-provoking question, I hope you don't mind, are you babysitters or are we educators? And that was like a revelation in the room. Many of them thought about, why am I here? What's my purpose? And there was a resounding, we're educators. We're educators. They were truly excited about the opportunity to see how what they're doing connects to the future. We recently visited a kindergarten classroom. It's one of our dual immersion classrooms, and it's a group of 18 students. And basically they switch classes, 18 in one room, 18 in the other. Well, Dr. Beasley and I noticed that of the 36 students, there was a divide. We could pick out the students who had gone to pre-K programs instantly based on where they were and how they were performing in the classroom. But when we looked at the files, there were only 2 of the 36 that had gone to a pre-K program in the state. And so our teachers are dealing with students who are on a continuum from 3 years of age really to 6 years of age in the pre-K classroom, depending on what's happening at home, if they're enrolled in a program, if they've had parents working with them. So our teachers are very excited about the opportunity to help connect and also address the gaps for them. So we've designed some professional learning opportunities for them.
I'm sorry, Dr. Beasley, but I had to make that point.
Stacy, you probably should have shared what dual immersion is. Those pre-K students or those kindergarten students are learning their content areas in German or French half of the day, in English the other half of the day. And mid-semester, they'll swap those subjects and learn the morning subject in the other language the other half of the day. It's an excellent program. We have 3 in our district, 3 of, I believe, maybe 5 or 6 in the state. Not many, but we're very pleased, just in case you're not aware of the dual immersion programs. But we're going to work to establish a literacy approach very quickly. We're going to look at the quality of our after-school programs. And, of course, you all know that oftentimes in many of our lower-performing schools, there is always a difference between the number of kids who take advantage of AP offerings. So we're looking at the AP offerings, the IB programs, to ensure that our kids take advantage of those opportunities. We're going to reinstate the middle and high school grad coaches in our lowest achieving schools. They were very instrumental prior to the recalculation of the graduation rate. We had coaches that were very instrumental in helping our district improve its graduation rate, so much so that many of our students who graduated, they attributed their success to the role of those coaches. Well, we recognize their value, so we're going to fund those positions again and assign them to our schools that seem to struggle the most in improving their grad rate. We're going to look at Jobs for Georgia graduates, and that's basically a school-to-work transition program that allows students to work on pre-readiness skills, pre-job skills, pre-employment skills. It's a Georgia affiliate of, I believe, America Graduates. So we are working to establish those programs in our schools that need the most support in building that grad rate. Of course, CTAE is very important. If you know our CTAE data, it's very clear, and this is one conversation we've had with Mr. Thurman. Our students who complete a CTAE pathway, their graduation rate is 80% or higher, even after the state recalculated the graduation rate. And it dropped from about 90%, their grad rate. So a student who completes a CTAE pathway has the likelihood 90%, recalculated 80% or so, graduating with a high school diploma. That is a significant difference between 60% of those who don't complete a pathway. So there, as we discussed, there are policy implications. If we know that students who complete a pathway are graduating at higher rates, then it makes sense that this should be a consistent expectation of our students. Of course, we're looking at career academies. We've shared some ideas there. And our ROTC programs, we're looking to strengthen those as well, realizing that many of our students obtain leadership skills and scholarships. And of course, gainful employment, whether they go into the military, a college career, or into the workplace through our ROTC programs. And then we're looking at the wraparound support services for our special populations, EL students in particular, those immigrants, refugee students who come here lacking the cultural experience that is necessary that they have in order to be successful. Goal 2, we're going to work on increasing the effectiveness of all of our district leaders, school leaders, and teachers. We want them to inspire, teach, and train. As you well know, Race to the Top requires that we work on teacher and leader effectiveness. As we have been working with the new evaluation instrument for now 1 full year, we're in our 2nd year of implementation. Our data tells us that most of our teachers are proficient. We had about 26 who were ineffective, and we had about 83 who were exemplary. Well, our goal is for all of our teachers to work toward exemplary. So we anticipate seeing groups of teachers, large groups of teachers, to go from proficient to exemplary.
Dr. Beasley, I know time is short, but share with the board what is ongoing now, where I was on Friday, 4:30 of this week, and who I had the opportunity to share some words with. And I think it was about 450 of them or so.
Almost 500 teachers,
Almost
sir.
500 teachers were here at this facility engaged in professional development on a Friday afternoon. And there have been others over several courses on Saturday. How many have we participated?
As a matter of fact, Mr. Thurman, with your support, we have served as of today on Saturdays and those 2 evening sessions that occurred last Thursday and Friday. Over 2,500 teachers have come out to participate in on face-to-face staff development training related to how to map their curriculum, how to engage students using 21st century tools, and how they should access our data system to use data to inform their instructional decisions. We're very pleased we've been able to provide stipends to the teachers, but most importantly, they have maxed out every session that we've held in the auditorium. We've capped each session at 400, and we've gone close to 450 to 500 in every session. We anticipate by the end of September that we would have had a conversation with well over, I'm hopeful, 3,500 teachers, which is well over the majority of our teaching force. And that's just one opportunity that we have actually implemented. We are currently planning a session related to teacher effectiveness, leader effectiveness, that we will also convey to them. We'll pay them a stipend to come, and they are excited about those sessions as well. What we've done, just in case you did not know, we have identified for every teacher in our district what it takes to be a proficient teacher, for every standard in their evaluation instrument, and what it takes to be an exemplary teacher for every standard. We've given that to them in writing. We had a team of teachers to develop that over the summer, and they're using that to basically improve their pedagogy, how they teach, and engage the students. So we're expecting to see some masses of our teachers moving from proficient to exemplary over time. We'll continue to work on professional development. Mr. Thurman was very pleased that we were able to identify a master teacher certification program for pre-K. Of course, we're working with the disciplinary process, and we're going to implement or re-implement a research assessment and accountability team to ensure we evaluate every initiative.
And I want to add, sometimes we interpret lack of student achievement, but sometimes it's a teacher quality issue. Right?
Yes.
That's right.
But we define it as underachieving students. And development, professional development, has suffered in recent years. Is that not fair?
Yes, sir, it has. As a matter of fact, Mr. Thurman, this is the first time in 2 years that we've been able to meet with groups of teachers. And they have been desirous of us providing this opportunity for them. We have the online platform that hopefully the board will approve tonight, but they have been desirous of that face-to-face interaction, which you all know is most helpful in that we're all social creatures. And so they've been coming, they've been getting great information, giving us great feedback, and they're going back implementing what they've learned in those classrooms. So we believe that teacher practice is improving as we have these conversations with our teachers.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm taking up your time. We got about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
If you can
very quickly, goal 3 is basically to build the capacity of our parents. Build the capacity of our parents, our guardians.
No, I've been put back in my place.
Yes, sir.
I'm just the superintendent. Dr. Carter and Mr. Mayfield said, take your time. All right. And since they signed my paycheck, I'm with them. All right.
Well, we'll move expeditiously, though. But we're going to work on our parents, to support our parents. We realize that there are things for parents to do in the school, but we also recognize that there are things for parents to do at home. So right now we're crafting our 10-point message, and hopefully Mr. Thurman will get a draft of that in the next week or so, our 10-point message that will allow parents to basically understand and agree to a few things that they can do at home to help support our kids. We have as a matter of fact, I'll just mention Ms. Marcia Coward is now on board. I believe she's somewhere in the audience. She's working with us, and we have some other staff members who are working to craft that message, and hopefully we'll get it to our superintendent in the next few days. And our goal is really to immerse our community with that message. That is going to be one of the first messages that we provide as to what parents can do. Not necessarily once you get to the school, but starting at home. What can you do at home to help us get the child ready to learn at school?
Once again, we define underperformance. Sometimes the parent may be underperforming. So it's incumbent upon us to help build capacity. And not just a parent, but also adult guardians, and that's important because we know the realities of the socioeconomic landscape is building capacity to assist, help us educate our children. And go right ahead. I'm sorry. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, that's good. We need excitement, don't we? We're going to continue to support learning. We're going to provide a variety of opportunities for our parents, of course, within our schools, but we're going to also provide district-level opportunities as well. So we'll be planning those activities, and you should be hearing more about that hopefully in the next few weeks.
And Dr. Thompson and the regionals are helping us to transform the culture in some schools that may not be as welcoming of parental engagement or mental engagement as it should be. We recognize that the culture is not the same throughout the district. We had a conversation, didn't we? Matter of fact, I had it with all the principals, that it is defined differently depending on which school and what part of the county you're visiting in terms of how our system interacts with parents and adult guardians. And we recognize that parents are more influential than superintendents and school board members and regional superintendents and principals as it relates to student achievement and performance.
In addition to working with our parents, we're working with our community partners to ensure that every school has, if you will, some wraparound support for the various students within the schools in that community. So we're working to establish our partnerships. We're pleased, and while the Race to the Top grant, we're in the process of submitting that for approval, we're embedding within that grant some opportunities for our community organizations to support what we do with our students in our schools, and more to come related to that as well. On the next,
how are you going to finance all this?
Oh, that's a good question, Mr. Thurman.
That's the question. Isn't that the elephant in
Yes.
the room? It sounds good.
I think so.
I knew you'd ask that question, Dr. Johnson. All right, Mr. Beasley, it's your.
Well, in addition to our local funds, and of course our board has an approved budget, a balanced budget, and so our funds are being targeted in various areas. But
And these are existing funds, right? These are dollars, Dr. Bell, am I correct? Already appropriated to the district. We're not looking for any new money. What we're going to do is utilize what we have in a more effective and efficient way, which is what Ms. Stacy and Dr. Beasley have been working on. How do we use what we have more effectively?
Well, you should have in your packet you can see on this slide a 2013-2014 budget, and this is basically, this gives you a pretty good idea of how much money we've got to work with. We're at right now, and I don't think I've got all the fund sources listed here, but I think we've tapped into most of them. We've got about $76 million that we're working with. In the back of your folder, you should have basically a detailed breakout of each of those budgets. And I just want you, if you will, take a second to look at the various budgets. Of course, we've got our pre-K budget, and that's why Mr. Thurman mentioned pre-K, to support our pre-K teachers. But we also have our Title I budget, roughly $34 million. We've got Title II to improve teacher-leader quality, roughly $3 million. We have, I hate to say it, we've got our last year, I hate to say it, but it's our last year of Race to the Top funds. Roughly $25 million for this coming up year. We've got SIG funds. Currently we have one SIG school that will be a part of Cohort 2, and we're applying for 3 additional applications. And we're hopeful that we'll get those 3 applications, which will infuse the district, in particular those schools, with more funds. We have our Education for Homeless Children and Youth funds. We have our state and our local professional learning funds, roughly $1.4 million. We've got Title IIIA, Immigrant and LEP, Limited English Proficient funds, and we have our Title IVB, 21st Century Learning Grant funds. But as you can see in all, we have about $76 million in funds allocated among those funding sources, and we're identifying basically how to align those resources in order to achieve the goals of the Bridge Initiative. If you could write on that budget in progress, because we are still tweaking this budget, but we're pleased that we were able to get some of the main areas. For example, the grad coaches, they'll be embedded in the budget. We are in the process, of course, all of our schools have their Title I allocations already, and we're working with them currently to write their plans and to develop their budget. So we anticipate that by mid-October, they will be well into the federal spending process, and we don't anticipate any issues related to them not being able to spend their funds, directly aligned to their plans and the goals. Title II, of course, we are using those funds for professional learning, and you should know in the past we've somewhat, I would say, diminished the impact of those funds by giving a little bit to this group, a little bit to that group, a little bit to this group. But this year our strategy is we're bringing all the groups to the table. We're asking basically, what does your data say? What areas do you need to work on to improve teacher quality, leader quality? What opportunities can we create to provide learning, but to also provide our employees an opportunity to receive a stipend with those funds? So we're working with all of the various departments. We're pleased that we're currently working with teachers. Hopefully we will have something in the near future, very near future, related to counselors, paraprofessionals, etc. But clearly you can see that we're working to leverage all of these funding sources. And again, I would say that the budgets are in progress. We are still working to refine and to develop those budgets. As we prepare to end the presentation, we want you to see in your PowerPoint on page 20 just an alignment of Title I, Title II. Basically, what will we support with each of those budgets beyond our local funds? And it identifies, thank you, Stacy, what goal it supports, which bridge initiative goal it also supports. Most important to Mr. Thurman, and of course to us, was to include an evaluation for every federal funding source. So we've identified evaluation metrics, and we plan this year to do a full program evaluation on all federal funding programs this year. And so you will see every budget has a line item for a full program evaluation so we can determine the impact these federal funds are having on bottom line student achievement, student performance, etc.
All right. I want to thank Dr. Beasley and Ms. Stacy Stepney. Y'all ought to give them a hand. They have done a phenomenal job, and I just appreciate it and all the support. And,
I want to thank the staff and certainly the superintendent. You've disaggregated the data and used that data to develop a design program, a line item, just as you would do a budget. So you did an instructional focus the same way we have been requesting that you do the budget. A line item so that each item can be identified. And of course, John would love this because now he knows where every dollar is going. He would not have to ask so many questions about about the dollar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. And I just want to reiterate, this is so exciting, and the senior staff, that they'll know. And one of the points that I shared with them is that if, for whatever reason, our children are not achieving their fullest potential, it's not because of lack of money. That's always the default position. It's not because of lack of love. It's all in our hands. And I have a commitment from the people I work with every day to do everything we can to make sure that every child, no matter where he or she lives, no matter which cluster they're in, will have access to a full quality education. And I just think, Mr. Chair, that you will see the impact of this, and I say it to the board members, you will see the impact of this strategy that these two fine people have presented today.
One other request that I personally would like to make, and I hope the board can agree with me, perhaps that we can use a board training session to go through this entire plan in such a way it will certainly substitute with some of the actual board training we get, because I'm more excited that this will be a lot better than some of the training we get otherwise. So I hope, Mr. Superintendent, you can arrange that.
Yes, sir.
At the appropriate time. At this time, I would.
Yeah, I'd just like to add a couple of comments as well. I'm very excited about this, and so I really appreciate not only your leadership on this, but the staff's putting this information together. This is where we need to be. This is certainly the direction that we need to be headed. And so I'm hoping that that in addition to this, that we begin to think about how this will align with the strategic planning effort that we're doing, so that we make sure that we've got congruence and consistency in that process. And also that we begin to, as you alluded to in some of your last comment, sort of getting the financial modeling together, because obviously we've got a lot of resources, but we're also looking at a lot of changes. And so I'm hoping that we can, get a clear sense of what the financial modeling, the puts and takes, the expense side of this, if you will, so that we can make sure that where we do have gaps, that we can be a little bit more proactive in looking for additional sources of revenue to close those gaps, to make sure that we actually can fully fund this effort, because I think this needs to be applauded and to be managed in a way that we can ensure success.
Dr. Morley.
I'm really pleased to see that we're taking a holistic approach to educating our children, because we're looking at the children at the center of this circle and everyone else on the outside coming in together. We're looking at staff development. It is so imperative to keep people learning. We want them to teach, but if they're not continuously learning themselves, they're going to be light years behind, and they cannot espouse what needs to go to the children in the here and now. And then they have parents there, the community, everything that needs to be here, Mr. Superintendent, is here. And I most certainly thank you all for the efforts that you all have put into this. It's a well put together document. It's quite comprehensive, and I'm excited about it also. And when you talk about parents and talking about getting them involved, because if there were no parents, there would be no children, and we wouldn't have any reason to be here tonight. So I think it's very important. So I really appreciate all the hard work you all have put into this.
Mr. Orson.
I want to thank you also. I think the focus on economically disadvantaged is a great concept. Superintendent and I talked before, organizing principle, because it does cut across a lot of those traditional silos that we put ourselves in, and I think historically it's demonstrable that that has really become the biggest indicator of potential success or failure, and as you pointed out so eloquently, that cuts across every demographic group. I had one question and then one comment. There was just one point which I was encouraged by, but I wanted a little clarity. When you talked about the area of parental effectiveness, the need to transform the culture, and are we talking about, and maybe it's both, the culture of the community, the culture of the leadership in the buildings, or the culture of both? Because I think
All of them.
Both.
okay, because I think those
Community in the building, at the central office,
because I think
stakeholders.
I think our the building leadership also at the end of the day has to believe that parental engagement is valuable to the success of the students in that building. The last part, and this is under goal 3, and the superintendent and I have had a conversation. It's something I know you just touch on it here. I don't expect a big build out, but the community collaboration, which I think particularly in those areas that are overly concentrated with students who aren't achieving at a high success level, means, in my mind, that we need strategies using the money we have. And it's not always about money, but also the implementation of money, including things like a 0 to 5 strategy, looking at the idea of a longer school day and a longer school year for more seat time, things like health services, which, as they've done, I've talked to the superintendent in the Whiteford Community Project in the city of Atlanta, I think is a good model to look at that real holistic approach, because we know that some of those things present almost an intractable barrier. If kids come to school unhealthy, it makes the job of the teachers and staff in those schools that much harder. So one of the places I would direct you to look at is at the Whiteford Community Project, because there is some history there. It was created in alignment with Emory University and Dr. George Brumley, who was the head of pediatrics before he passed away a couple of years ago. And I think there are some models. I think this is a great approach, comprehensive, and probably far more far-reaching than what Whiteford does in terms of its scope and ambition. But we should also try to tap into some models that may exist close to us. The Whiteford is a lot like the Harlan Project with Jeffrey Canada in it, but I think we have some examples right here that we can tap into. But anyway, this is a great place to start, and I know for myself, and I think all my colleagues, we look forward to seeing the updates on it.
Mr. Pandian.
From pre-K, and I was wondering if, as a part of this plan, I know pre-K is already widely available, but it's not universal availability for all families in the county, and as a part of this plan, would you include spreading access to pre-K in order that more students can experience the positive effects of these program changes?
Very good. We'll make sure we add that consideration.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Superintendent,
That
for your report.
concludes my report. Thank you.